Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek Jain, and through this video I'm just gonna explain how you can build your own RESTful API endpoint automation framework without using any tool, right? And all you need to know is the Python as a programming language. So if you know the Python programming language, then you can just build your own automation framework in just few minutes and just a few lines of code, right? So before we get into the coding part, let me explain what the web server, which I just built, actually doing, right? So I just use the fast API, web server library of Python, and I just built four different kind of API requests. A post request is just to create the user. Get is to just get the specific user information. Put is going to update the user information, and delete is actually my web server actually interact with the Postgres, and my Postgres is running under the container. And here is, the table, which you can see on the screen where, I have inserted 8 users, right? So user is already there. Now what we're going to do is we just want to build our own API automation. So the ideally, which I'm going to use is PyCharm. If you have preference to use any other ideally, you can just do that. Now, just to build, your RESTful API endpoint, all you need is, let me just add one simple file. I'm going to call this .mv, right? So the Python library which we're going to use, first one is a request, which is actually going to just, build our own request, like for post get, put and commit. And the another one which we're going to use is Pytest, which is a testing framework, which Python provides, right? So I really love this Pytest, right? Has a lot of strength, right? So we're going to explore some of them, the strength of the Pytest, right? So as usual, we can just install these two library because these doesn't come with, standard Python installation. So what you need is pip install Pytest and request. And I'm just gonna keep this very simple so that whosoever is beginner to the Python, they can also just build their own framework, right? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a Python package, and I'm just gonna say test web. So okay, just now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create. I'm not gonna cover, how the Pytest works. I mean, probably if you guys are interested, please feel free to put that in the comment section if you don't know how this work. So I'm assuming that you know a little bit of Pytest, but as we're gonna write, so as we're gonna write, the code, you will understand why it's. So this is my first test API endpoint flyby. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna import request for now. Okay, so now what we need very first thing, which is, database URL, right? So I'm running my web server on my local host, and let me just put I'm just gonna say host and just running on the right now. We have create user. I can here API documentation, which is the UI. Users, create users. Just, I need to change the request type, and then it's same, right? So it's going to be users, and then it's going to be user ID. Okay, so now let's start with create user first. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna define one method called test post request. Right. So this is the name I just gave so that we know precisely what this test is. right? So the very first thing which we have to do, we have to create our post data. I'm just gonna go back to the Swagger UI. If you expand this and try this out, you can see here what all information it's need. It's need user ID, it's name, it's requires name, username, password. These are the 5 things which you need, right? So what I'm gonna do is I just created some. So I'm just gonna say data user. So basically what I'm doing here is I just need a user ID, name, username, password, and email, right? We can assign some value here. We can underscore ID underscore Excel shape 1, 2, 3, and then I can say language equals to. We're gonna just make it everything generic, and we have some other libraries like Faker and all that we're gonna see how we can use some dummy data creation or test data creation library Faker. But first, just set up a fundamental foundational code with us, and then we can just use this. Username, I can say shake and the password. This is not something which we're going to use for right now. I'm just saying anything. Okay. Just use. So I have everything done. Now what I need is I need a one variable which I'm calling as a response, and now I'm just gonna call this on my screen. It says that what all information we need. We need URL, data, JSON files, headers, cookies. There are many more. We can read from the document. Thing which we have to pass in is, so what I'm gonna do is I'm this URL, right? And then we users. Okay, and then I'm gonna just pass JSON data because I have JSON. If you want, you can just put this into the try else, try exceptions. Error if you want to error here and then service false, right? But if your request gets executed successfully and this endpoint works as expected, then we're gonna get the response saved in the response variable which we defined in the try section. So now we're gonna check response our status code. Status code gonna be 200. So this is the first assertion which we're gonna have, right? Then what we can do, we can say response dot JSON, which is actually going to get the response and just go back to same values which we have here. It's fine. Now you can see the response code you are getting 200. So I just put this. You can use Swagger UI whenever you get, any API automation to be work. You can always go to the Swagger UI, just do this manually and just see what kind of response request body is needed, what kind of response is needed. You can read the code, what kind of code response you are getting from a successful response and all this stuff, right? And the validations, whatever is implemented by dev team, you can just see everything here. It's further, right? So now I know these are the 7 things which we gonna get as a response. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just I don't need to do anything. Once I assert this, all I need to do is to assert this. And if this works fine, then we can say, this endpoint is actually working fine for this process. Run this, stream this. So the since we are using Pytest, so we can use Pytest, and then we can just give the name SV, or when we can just talk about the option which we have. Right. It's failing. It's saying that for rate. So it seems like I just made a mistake somewhere in drafting the. Like check the URL. It's good. Check. I can make it four, six. What does it exist? Oh, still here. I just added this extra forward slash. See. That is something which fix why this is happening. Where are the other data is just to size the so we have here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to extract the precise values which we have. Okay, just going to response JSON which contains JSON response. Okay. Response. Exactly where the is. That's one opening. It's gonna give us where the problem is. Success is error. Why it is happening? Because we are seeing value like change. So save. Because in the previous test, it was only failing for some values. 1, 2, we change here, but we which currently doing. And it's gonna fail because it's already created. Two, 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 two. Now it's gonna get the sense. So it seems like it's everything is working fine. We can quickly check on a database whether we use got this. We cannot run the same code with the same test, right? So what I'm gonna do now is there is another library which I'm gonna use. And this library is known as, and I love this library, which is Speaker, right? So what this does is actually help us a lot to uh, improve Speaker and what we need to do is test data. Uh, so skill plus I'm just going to say test data. Uh, there is a function called run number. I'm going to say number of digits I want, right? So I just need a 5-digit random number and which I'm just appending with the user string. Then I need a name, test data, uh, name, and then I'm going to get the username. So, with a say password, for password, say test data password. There are many options like I mean how long the password we want. Uh, then we have whether we need a special uh, characters or not. So I'm going to say yes. Do we need a digits in it? Yes. Do we need uppercase? True. Do we need lower case? Say yes. Okay, so now this is gonna give us a password, and then we're gonna save as data equals that email section, right? So now all I need is this looks good. So here, let just copy paste the same thing. So I just remove 5 fields because these status and message seems to be two additional field. Again, you can go to Swagger UI and extract all these info from there. That is how that's what it looks like. Okay, and now we should be good. So if we run this test again, we won't get that issue where we have to change our values manually, right? And if we go back to the database, there should be dual record call, right? And we can just run this test as many as we want without an issue, right? So we make this test generate and we are using a faker library, right? So this is how we can just automate the post. If what else we can, there we go. Here, this is a session because that way we can precisely know where the problem is. If you want, you can just put something. Stop. It's just to make your login more of the rules so that it will be very helpful for you to clear the problem. So This is good. So this way we can automate the post request, and same thing we can do with get. Okay, if you want that. Just user. So what we can do, request, the very first thing which we need a URL, and the URL says it's user only. We can go back here, get request for server UI. See the only ID, which is user ID. So we can. So we already have. So let's see. User. What all class. Okay, so what we can do. This, and what you can say here, have users, and then we say user ID. User ID is this JSON check. So I'm just going to this and say that we ID, and we don't need to feed in any data because it's that's the which we need. And instead of post, we just sorry for get. We can get, and we can simply check from here, right? I can let's see what we get. So just to give you a little bit of break, what we can do, we can just comment this out for now. What you can do is you can just print response JSON, and then we're gonna use that. So let's run this. So it's gonna run the first test, which is user, which is passed, and then we are seeing this get request is also being passed because we are having only single assertion, which is just comparing the status code, but not the actual data which is being written as for the response. So what you need to do is you need to use its structure, right? So now what we're gonna say. Means we are getting a password in hash format. Good, but now what we need is just it's hard coded. I hope you are understanding why I'm doing so, because I want to generate and I'm just passing the same value for which the previous test is actually adding the user, right? And that's the reason I'm going to see that, right? Password, I can just remove because I don't want that to compare, because real time we are not use it. We need questions. So this is what we are now what we can just come this way. Expected response data. So it's pretty much same. What I have done is an expected response. I just removed the password because getting is, the hash value, but what information we have, which is a plain data, right? Plain text password. So we cannot compare it, right? Until unless we know which hashing algorithm is going to use. So that's not an issue. If they are returning a password, it's not a good thing. Actually, I just build that, so probably password is not something which we should be on this way. Now my test would be more stronger because it's not only comparing the status code, but it's also comparing the states as well, right? So this looks good. So we are done with post, we are done with the get. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use the right that test. So it's pretty much same, put update. So what I'm doing here is now I need to understand, how the put request is constructed, right? Can just try it out. So we have three fields which we need to pass as a request, what we name, again, and user ID. And then the response which we're gonna get is, two additional field, name, email, user ID, which are first only, but two things are getting added, status and message. Status just gives whether the request is successful or not, and then the message, the precise message, right? So now this update name, what I'm gonna do for this update name is, and we here copy this and we can call this name. This user ID is going to be same. Name, score. Score name. So, see. If I run this, let's see. It's 15 rows, check market here. So this is going to create the first user. Once it's get passed, let's go back and see. We got Lisa Lee. Okay, so passed. Now the user ID 1605 was having a Lisa Lee name, and the email was tracy7@example.org, but it now is updated to Gina Williams. Just see the response which we are getting. So now it's quite generic, right? So you can run this test without even changing anything. It's generic enough. And so far we have used only three libraries. Pytest, we use request, and we use the faker, right? The last one which we need to use is just to assert whether the delete is also working fine, right? So here, and it's just test whether the delete is working fine. So again, I'm going back to the Swagger UI. You have to keep using the Swagger UI to understand the request and the response, and you have to expand this. And now you can see the user ID is the required parameter which we need to feed in. There is no request body, so only the parameter needs to be passed, and then we're gonna get the response like user ID, status, and message, right? And here you can see delete data, which is user ID. But if you just see here the base URL, delete data, we are not feeding in anything. The only thing is we are just passing user ID after the users, and the difference is, instead of put, now the request type is still, right? Same thing is here, right? The so if you run this test, get user link here. Now we have just automated, all the four kind of requests with a very happy and the positive parts, right? So it's a very basic test which we have automated. But now we have a foundation laid down, right? So we have automation in place for post, get, delete, and update, right? Right now we can keep enhancing this, to just automate more scenarios, because this is not Because in real time, you are not always going to have these at the top. You have some negative scenarios as well. For example, if you want to create, user with the wrong structure, what kind of response you are getting, whether the response is user friendly or not, right? Same thing, if you are trying to just hit, you are trying to get the user which does not exist, then what kind of response you're going to get? Same thing, if you are trying to update or delete the user which doesn't exist, then how the your web server and how web server is responding, right? So we have to verify that as well. That we're gonna cover in the next section, right? So that's pretty much it, which I wanted to cover for this video. If you have any feedback or any suggestion, feel free to put that into the comment section so that I can just implement in my next video where we're gonna see how we can automate the negative scenarios around these four. Thanks for watching this. Stay healthy and keep learning.